You think you know fear, but you don't, not until you've watched your best friend die on Halloween night, not until you've heard the knocking at your door that never stops, or picked up a phone to hear someone whisper, "I'm coming for you." These stories are real. They happened to people who thought they were safe in their homes, at their parties, walking down familiar streets. But Halloween has a way of twisting the ordinary into something cruel. Behind every mask, behind every innocent laugh, there's something waiting, something patient, something human. Before you turn off the lights, before you lock the door, remember, not every ghost is dead, and not every monster hides under the bed. Some are standing right outside your window, watching, waiting for you to open it. Welcome to Midnight Hauntings, the channel that drags true horror from the shadows and leaves it trembling in your hands. Subscribe, if you dare. I was 22 when I attended what would become the last Halloween party ever held at Nick's house. Nick was my best friend, the kind of guy who lived for Halloween, the fog machines, the fake corpses, the blood-splattered walls that smelled faintly of paint and beer. His parents flew to New York every October, leaving the house to him and his twisted imagination. That year, though, something darker than any decoration walked through those doors. We were all drunk, high, and laughing like idiots, a small gang of lost college souls, me, Nick, Vinny, Joey, and Q. We were upstairs in Nick's room, the bong clouding the air thick as fog, when we heard two heavy bangs from downstairs. They weren't knocks, they were thuds, solid and final, like someone slamming a body against a door. The music stopped mid-beat. Then came the screaming dozens of voices, male and female, blending into chaos.
What is it?
Even through the haze, we knew it wasn't part of the show. Nick's face went pale. He stumbled to the door, opened it a crack, and he looked down the hallway. A second later, he came running back, eyes wide, breath trembling. "Hide," he whispered. We didn't ask questions. He turned off the light, locked the door, and dove into the closet with Joey. I crawled under the bed with Q, while Vinny squeezed himself into the storage trunk by the window. The house fell into a silence so sharp it made our ears ring. Then, the front door slammed downstairs. A man's voice shouted something we couldn't understand over the pounding of boots and muffled sobs. Someone screamed. Then, bang, another gunshot. My body went stiff. I pressed my hand over my mouth, feeling my pulse throb against my palm. The footsteps came closer, climbing the stairs one by one, slow, deliberate, unhurried. Whoever it was knew exactly where to go. The knob on the bedroom door rattled. When it didn't open, the man rammed his shoulder against it, again and again, until the lock splintered. 3 quick shots, metal striking metal, and the door flew open. Through the dusty cloth hanging under the bed, I saw black boots step into the room, torn jeans, a long coat, gloved hands. The boots stopped in front of the closet. Nick begged for his life. I could hear it in his voice, raw, trembling, stripped of ego. "Please, man, take anything. Take my money, just don't hurt anyone." The man told him to come out. Nick obeyed. The sound of his footsteps faded down the hallway. I wanted to run, to scream, to do something, but my body was cement. The seconds stretched into an eternity. Then, finally, silence. The front door slammed again. They were gone. When Nick came back upstairs, his face was grey and hollow. "They're gone," he whispered. But the way he said it made me feel like he had left part of himself down there. We followed him cautiously into the living room. That's when we saw them, Jen and Robbie, lying side by side on the floor, blood pooling beneath their heads, their Halloween masks still on, staring blankly at the ceiling. The smell hit us before the sight did iron, beer, smoke. It's a smell that never really leaves you. The police came, flashing lights against the paper ghosts still hanging in the windows. The house reeked of weed and cheap booze, but nobody cared. They only wanted to know about the intruders, 4 men wearing fedoras, vendetta masks, gloves, and long coats. They had demanded $100,000 in cash. When Nick said he didn't have it, they told him to fill their sack with valuables instead. Everyone at the party was forced to throw their wallets into the bag. 2 people resisted, 2 people died. The rest of us survived by hiding. Nick never recovered. The newspapers called it the Vendetta Killings, though the killers were never caught. I remember visiting Nick a few months later. He was thinner, quieter. His hand shook when he rolled a cigarette. He told me he saw Jen and Robbie in his dreams every night, their blood mixing with confetti and smoke. He said he could still hear their voices calling for him to help. He said it was his fault because it was his house, his party, his idea. That was the last real conversation I had with him. After that, Nick stopped showing up to class. He started drinking in the mornings, skipping meals, trading friends for dealers. By the time July came, he was gone, dead from a heroin overdose. Some said it was an accident. I think it was guilt. Every Halloween since, I've avoided parties. I don't hang cobwebs or carve pumpkins. Sometimes, though, when the wind hits my windows just right, it sounds like fists pounding on a locked door. And for a second, I'm back in that room, hiding under the bed, watching those black boots move across the floor, waiting for them to stop. It started with a knock. Not a polite tap, not the kind of knock that says, "Delivery's here," but
Hello?
A slow, heavy pounding that seemed to come from inside the walls themselves. The clock read 11:03 p.m., October 31st. My movie was halfway through when I heard it the first time. At first, I thought it was some late-night trick-or-treaters, kids desperate for one last sugar high before bed. I even smiled, remembering my own Halloweens. But when I looked through the front window, the porch was empty. The street outside was silent, the orange lamplight catching only the falling leaves. Then came another knock, harder this time, followed by a long pause, as if whoever it was wanted me to know they were still there. My irritation overrode my unease. "Get lost!" I shouted. The pounding grew louder, impatient.
I saw the light on.
I threw open the door. Nothing. The night air was cold enough to sting, and the silence felt like mockery. I searched the bushes, the car, even the shadows under the oak tree. No one. When I stepped back inside, I double-locked the door and turned the deadbolt until it clicked. Yet, even through the muffled sounds of my TV, I could still hear it, the pounding, rhythmic, deliberate. By midnight, I was done. I shouted, cursed, even threatened to call the cops. Whoever was out there didn't answer. They just kept hitting the door, slow and steady. Eventually, exhaustion won. I must have fallen asleep on the couch because when I opened my eyes again, it was 2 a.m. The TV flickered silently, and for a second, I thought it was all over, until I realized the knocking hadn't stopped. Only now, it was coming from inside.
Our mom.
From my bedroom door, every hair on my body stood up. My breath caught in my throat. Someone or something was in my house. The doorknob rattled once, twice, then a shove. I could hear the wood creaking. I stumbled for something, anything, to defend myself with. Then I remembered the old stereo system I'd hooked to my phone. My hands trembled as I typed gunshot sound effect. I pressed play. A deafening blast echoed through the speakers. It sounded real enough to shake the walls. I stopped the sound and yelled, "That was a warning shot. Leave now or I'll blow."
I am so sorry.
"Your head off!" For a moment, silence, then footsteps 2 sets retreating fast down the hall, across the living room, and out the front door. I waited, my heart hammering, before checking. The door stood wide open, the cold night rushing in. I called the police, but they found no one. I moved out 3 months later. Across town, a 14-year-old boy was spending his Halloween alone. His name doesn't matter, but his story echoes the same kind of fear. His mum had gone trick-or-treating with his younger sister, leaving him to hand out candy. It started with the phone ringing, the kind of ring that cuts straight through whatever you're doing. "Hello?" he said. Nothing. Just breathing slow, deliberate, too heavy to be a prank. The line went dead. A few minutes later, it rang again. Same number. Same silence. By the third call, a voice finally came through, low and distorted. "I'll be paying you a visit tonight." He hung up, furious, but the fear had already begun to grow in his stomach like ice. Half an hour later, the power went out. The lights, the TV, everything. Then came
Hello?
the pounding on the front door. Hard. Angry.
Hello?
The boy screamed, certain he was about to die. Then came laughter outside, a familiar laugh. It was his friend Steve, doubled over with tears of amusement. "You idiot," the boy shouted. "You nearly gave me a heart attack." Steve looked confused. "Wait, what voice?" I just called and breathed into the phone. It was a joke, man. It wasn't funny anymore. When they checked the fuse box, the wires had been snipped. Whoever made those earlier calls had been real and close enough to kill the power. The calls had been traced later that night to a payphone outside a bar 2 blocks away. The third story took place in a quiet neighborhood around the same hour. A group of kids were trick-or-treating when they noticed a man standing perfectly still at the end of the street. He wore an old mask and held a lantern. Every time they passed him, his head would turn just enough to follow them. He never moved his feet, never spoke, only watched. They laughed it off at first, just another Halloween actor, maybe part of some haunted trail. But as the night went on, he seemed to appear again and again, no matter where they went. Finally, at the last house, they turned around and saw him standing directly in the road, waiting. Panic set in. They banged on the door and told the homeowners. When the adults came out, the masked man walked slowly down the street and disappeared. Later that night, another neighbor reported seeing the same figure hiding behind a tree, waving little kids over. He only left when someone shouted that they were calling the police. No one ever found him. All 3 stories blend together in my mind, like a fever dream, doors that open when they shouldn't, voices that whisper from the dark, strangers who wear masks, not for fun but for hunger. We spend Halloween chasing thrills, dressing like monsters, but sometimes the monsters dress like us. Sometimes they knock on our doors just to see who's foolish enough to answer. Every October 31st, when the wind begins to shift and the neighborhood fills with laughter, I think about those knocks, those calls, those masks. The sound of a doorknob turning still makes my chest tighten. The echo of a phone ringing at night makes me freeze. Because fear doesn't always come with claws or fangs. Sometimes it comes in threes. A knock, a call, a mask. The night air smelled like burnt leaves and candy wrappers. The streets were nearly empty, just a few porch lights still glowing, plastic skeletons swinging in the breeze. Casey and I were 11 too old for costumes that glowed in the dark, but still young enough to crave one last bag of free candy. We had crossed the little wooden bridge over Jackwinkle River, laughing about which house had the best chocolate, when a black Jeep rolled up on the other side. Its headlights cut across the bridge, bright as interrogation lamps, and stopped us cold. The engine idled, low and growling. The windows were tinted black. Then they rolled down halfway, and a man's voice called out, "Hey, you kids come here for a sec." His tone was raspy, the voice of a lifelong smoker. He said he needed directions, that he was lost, but the words didn't match the way he said them. Every syllable scraped like sandpaper. I yelled back, "Sorry,"
Are we good to go?
and grabbed Casey's sleeve.
Almost. Just one more thing.
We turned and started walking fast, pretending not to be scared. The Jeep didn't move at first. Then it backed away slowly, like a predator tracking its prey. We thought we were safe when we hit the next street, but that's when the SUV appeared. It barreled around the corner, tires screeching, and stopped right in front of us. The door windows rolled down, and the same voice, hoarse and wheezing, spoke again. "We've got candy, lots of it. Hop in." Inside the car were 3 men. The one in the passenger seat had greasy grey curls and a thick mustache that looked like it hadn't been trimmed in decades. The man in the back leaned forward, his teeth yellow, his breath visible in the cold. He said, "Come on, kids, just a ride home. We'll take you anywhere." My throat went dry. We turned to run, but the Jeep from before came roaring down the other side of the street, trapping us between the 2 vehicles. The SUV revved its engine, inching closer, and then both passenger doors opened at once. 2 of the men stepped out older, slower, but determined. I don't remember screaming, though I must have. All I remember is grabbing Casey's hand and sprinting like the ground behind us was on fire. Our candy bags tore open as we ran, spilling sweets onto the pavement. The Jeep's headlights swung around, chasing us like hunting dogs. My house was only a few blocks away, but it felt like miles. We could hear them shouting, "Come back here!" their footsteps pounding behind at us. I remember Casey tripping, scraping his knee, crying out. I pulled him up and kept running. When we turned onto my street, I saw the porch light my mum had left on for us, and that was enough. We flew up the steps and pounded on the door, slamming the bell over and over until my mum flung it open. The moment she saw our faces, she yanked us inside and locked the door. "What happened?" she demanded, but we couldn't speak. We just pointed at the street, where the Jeep idled for a few seconds, before turning around and disappearing. My mum called the police immediately, voice shaking. My dad came running out of the bedroom, grabbed his jacket, and ran outside barefoot, but the cars were gone. The officers arrived 20 minutes later, took our statements, and promised to patrol the area. My mum wouldn't let us sleep alone that night. Every noise outside made her flinch. At 3 in the morning, the flashing lights returned, this time red and blue. My dad peeked through the curtains and shouted, "They got them!" The police had pulled over a black Jeep and an SUV near the old gas station. 3 men in handcuffs were standing beside them. They fit our description exactly. Older, grey hair, smokers' voices, the kind of faces that belonged behind bars. My dad went outside to talk to the officers, and when he came back in, he was shaking not from fear but from rage. We ran to the doorway and saw them under the harsh police lights. The men looked right at us, their faces expressionless. Casey, trembling beside me, lifted his hand and flipped them off. I did the same. My mum pulled us back inside, whispering, "Don't look at them, just go to bed." But I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those headlights. That night didn't end with cheers or celebration. It ended with my mum pacing the floor until dawn, terrified because those men now knew where we lived. The police said they'd patrol the neighborhood for a few nights, but after that, it would be up to us.
Where do you want to put this?
My dad bought new locks, motion lights, even a security system, but none of it erased the fear. For months, every car that slowed near our house made my stomach twist. When I got older, I found out the truth. The 3 men had been linked to multiple kidnapping attempts across nearby towns. Most of their targets were children walking home alone at night. The Jeep and SUV were part of their routine. They'd block off both sides of a street and trap their victims. But that Halloween night, they'd chosen the wrong kids. It's been years, but I still remember the sound of that engine. Sometimes I'll be driving and hear a Jeep behind me with the same low rumble, and my hands will grip the steering wheel until my knuckles go white. Every Halloween, when I see children running door to door with bags full of candy, I wonder how close danger is to them, how thin the glass is between laughter and terror. People talk about ghosts, about spirits wandering on Halloween night, but the truth is scarier. Monsters don't need to crawl out of graves. They drive, they smoke, they smile at you through rolled down windows and offer you candy. And when I think about that night, when Casey and I ran until our lungs burned and our hearts felt like they'd tear out of our chests, I realized that the scariest part wasn't the chase. It was knowing how easily it could have ended differently, how close those hands were to grabbing us, how close those headlights were to never turning away. Every Halloween since, I've turned off my porch light early, not because I hate the holiday, but because I can't stand the idea of anyone knocking on my door. Some fears never fade. They just wait in the dark, like the Jeep in the distance, engine still running. The sound of a child's voice can be the most terrifying thing in the world when it comes from the dark. "Daddy," my daughter whispered, shaking my shoulder. "There's someone in my closet." It was just after midnight on Halloween. I had fallen asleep on the couch after our movie night. I wanted to laugh, to tell her it was her imagination, but something in her voice froze me. It wasn't whiny or playful. It was flat, trembling, real fear. I told her to go back to bed, that the shadows in her room were just her toys. But 5 minutes later, she came back again, eyes wide. "He's moving," she said. I heard him. My heart started to hammer. I walked her to her room, switched on the light, and stared at the closet door. The air felt wrong heavy, like the room itself was holding its breath. "See?" I said, forcing a smile. "No one here." Then came the sound, a thud from inside the closet. I told her to run to the neighbor's house and call the police. When she was gone, I yanked the door open. Sitting on top of her Lego box was a teenage boy, the neighbor's son, Randy. His eyes went wide when he saw me. I grabbed him by the collar, dragged him out of the closet, and shoved him toward his house next door. My daughter was already there, crying on the porch. When Randy's father answered the door, I shoved his son into his chest. He was hiding in my daughter's closet. I shouted.
"Who's there?"
The man slapped his son across the face so hard, the sound echoed down the street. Then he begged me to come inside, to let Randy explain. The boy stammered out a story, something about a dare, about sneaking in through an open window while we were trick-or-treating. But then he said the words that made my blood run cold. "Daryl's still in there." I ran. The front door of my house was still open, the TV flickering silently. When I reached my daughter's room, I saw him. Another boy, older, with greasy hair and dark eyes. He was holding my daughter's underwear. I don't remember crossing the room. I just remember grabbing him, slamming him against the floor, and hitting him again and again until my arms ached. He crawled out the door, crying, and ran, attack into the night. I never called the police. Maybe I should have. But in that moment, all I wanted was for the nightmare to be over. The next morning, when I finally found the courage to look, there was a small hole drilled into the closet door. They had been watching her sleep. That's the thing about fear. It doesn't need to come from ghosts. Sometimes it wears the face of the boy next door. Across town, another family was unpacking boxes in their new house in Mississauga. The move had been exhausting, and the night was quiet, except for the rustle of cardboard and the ticking of the hallway clock. The girl, maybe 13, went upstairs while her parents finished cleaning. Around 11:30, she heard footsteps in the hallway. She called out for her brother. No answer. When she checked, no one was there. She told herself it was nerves, new house, strange sounds, Halloween night. But when she got back to bed, the temperature dropped. Her breath came out in misty clouds. Then came the knocking, soft at first, then louder, from her parents' bedroom door down the hall. She waited for someone to answer, but no one did. The banging grew faster, angrier, until it stopped all at once. The silence pressed against her ears. She tried to sleep again, but the door to her room creaked open. Footsteps slow, deliberate, moved closer. She turned onto her side and saw it. A figure standing over her, impossibly tall, its head almost scraping the ceiling. For a long second, it said nothing. Then, in a low voice, it whispered one word. "Boo!" She screamed until her parents burst into the room, switching on the light. The space beside her bed was empty. They told her it was a dream, that she imagined it, but she knew she hadn't. You don't imagine something that looks straight into your eyes. The family moved out a few months later. The house was sold again. And again. Each new tenant lasted less than a year. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, a group of college lows. Her friends decided to end their Halloween night at a haunted house attraction called Journey to the Basement. The place was legendary, a real mansion turned into a maze of blood, cobwebs, and narrow corridors. They entered laughing, pushing each other toward the jump scares, the flashing lights, the fake coffins. But when they reached the basement, everything changed. It was pitch black. The air was thick and wet. The rules said no phones allowed, so they had no lights, no signal. Somewhere in that darkness, one of them bumped into someone tall, silent, unmoving. "Sorry," he said, thinking it was one of his friends. The figure's hand touched his shoulder. He screamed and ran. They eventually found a key on a dusty table and used it to unlock the exit. Outside, they laughed it off until the exit door opened again. A man stepped out wearing a black robe and a pig mask dripping with fake blood. At least, they thought it was fake. He didn't speak. He just followed them, slow and steady, as they walked away from the attraction. At first, they joked about it, turning it into a game. But every time they stopped, he stopped. Every time they moved, he moved. By the time they reached Eddie's street, the laughter was gone. "We don't have your key," one of them yelled, thinking the man was part of the haunted house crew. The pig man kept walking. When they reached Eddie's house, they ran through the gate and slammed it behind them. The backyard lights flickered on, catching the glint of the mask just as the figure pushed through the gate again, faster this time. Eddie screamed for his dad to get the gun. The man froze, turned his head, and for the first time, spoke. "Don't shoot," he said, his voice muffled by the mask. "I'm only 27. Eddie's father pointed the gun at his chest and told him to get lost. The man backed away and disappeared into the dark. When the friends called the haunted house the next day, the manager swore no one there had worn a pig mask. No employee, no costume on record. Whoever had followed them home wasn't part of the show. Fear takes many forms: a whisper through a keyhole, a hand reaching from the dark, a mask that hides no face at all. But whether it's human or something else, it always starts the same way, with a sound you think you imagined. A thud, a creak, a laugh that lasts too long. And by the time you realize you're not alone, it's already standing right behind you. Halloween has always promised a safe kind of fear. We decorate our houses, paint fake blood on our faces, and chase the thrill of being scared while knowing it isn't real. But these 8 stories remind us that sometimes the most terrifying things aren't supernatural. They're painfully human. They live next door, walk past us on the street, and wait for us to open the door. Nick's story showed us how one night of chaos can destroy a life. The intruders who broke into his Halloween party wore masks, but it was Nick who carried the real horror inside him afterward.
Fear,
the guilt,
the
grief,
instinct.
the slow collapse of his soul. He never escaped his own ghosts. The man who heard knocking at 2 a.m. and the boy who answered silent phone calls learned that danger doesn't always announce itself with screams. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it plays with your patience until you doubt your senses. The masked man on the street, the jeep full of predators, each of them exploited the same weakness: trust. We think we can tell when something's wrong. We think monsters look like monsters, but they don't. The father who found the intruder in his daughter's closet faced the ugliest kind of evil, the one that wears a familiar face. That story hits different because it's not about ghosts. It's about violation, about innocence stolen without a single word spoken. The girl in the new house saw something no one believed, but belief isn't the point. When fear is real enough to shake your bones, it doesn't matter whether it's made of flesh or shadow. And the friends, chased by a man in a pig mask, they remind us that sometimes the mask never comes off because the person behind it doesn't want to be seen.
Keeps us alive.
It's not the darkness itself that's frightening, it's the idea that someone chooses to live inside it. If these stories teach anything, it's this: fear is useful. It's the oldest instinct we have. It keeps us alive. Listen to it. Lock the doors. Trust the uneasy feeling in your stomach when something feels off. Tell someone. Call the police. Turn on the lights. Don't be ashamed to be scared. It's your body warning you that the world isn't as safe as you'd like to believe. Halloween should stay a night of laughter and costumes, not headlines and obituaries. But pretending the real monsters aren't out there won't make them go away. The truth is, the line between thrill and tragedy is razor thin, and it's drawn in the dark. So tonight, as you blow out your candles and step into bed, remember, not every mask comes off when the night ends. Some stay on long after the party's over. Some are still out there, walking the streets, looking for the next house with the lights still on. And if you listen carefully, you might hear the knocking start again.